We position ourselves as a tech platform that disrupts moving and storage space. Prove to yourself and the market that there is a service that you built that has a demand. Once you go to the VC market and start raising finance, the rules of the game change. The earlier you take the external funding in, the higher the percentage give away.
If you're going to raise externally, you have to go in at the right point.
Absolutely. We raised 1.2 to 1.3 million. We're probably the only company in the industry that have body cams, where you're getting A to Z service from professional movers. We'll collect everything through a doorstep, take it to our storage facilities, and you will get a digital list of all your items. At any point in time, you can request a certain item to be delivered back to you in a matter of 48 hours. It's twice as affordable.
So you're getting more of a service for half the price. It's not just because you're on the podcast, but I wish I knew this before. I could have definitely benefited from this to revolutionizing the storage and home moving industry. Welcome to this week's podcast, hosted by Navigate Finance, your real estate finance partner, where you can realize your potential. Today, we're joined here by Rashid Aliyev, the co-founder of Stackt. Rashid.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Amazing. How are you?
Good. Looking forward to this conversation.
Likewise,
I want to learn a lot about Stackt and the process involved in getting to Stackt and getting Stackt to where it is today, basically. You just mentioned you came from a VC event?
It wasn't an event as such. It was more of essentially one of the potential investors that are interested to participate in our latest round.
Yeah.
So we'll be doing this second time in a row today, sharing this story
Wow.
of Stackt.
Okay, excellent. A lot of people are interested. It's a good sign.
So let's see.
Yeah, so tell us, for people who don't know what Stackt is, haven't heard about Stackt, it's just a name to everybody. What is Stackt?
Well, Stackt is your go-to moving and storage provider. We position ourselves as a tech platform that disrupts moving and storage space. And moving and storage space has been historically just one of the least technologically disrupted industries in the world. And what's fascinating is when you look at all the other services that we've been using on a daily basis or on a regular basis, is being so technologically disrupted in a way that we can order food with a matter of clicks, we can order anything we want from Amazon with a matter of clicks, and it will be delivered in a matter of 24, 48 hours. But whenever you have to move or store stuff, it feels like you're going back in time. And you're going back in time by 100 or 200 years. Because if you look back, nothing has really changed in a way people move or store stuff, right? So, and that's something that fascinated us as Stackt originated, and something that we wanted to fix. Because when you look at the global trends that are happening today, the demand for that is growing. And I think if you ask any of your friends or even some of the audience, 9 out of 10 would say that was a terrible experience, something that they never want to experience again, whether anything with respect to moving or storage, because it was super stressful, inconvenient, and zero technology, super expensive and everything. And that the reason why people have these problems is primarily because, again, it's just nothing has changed, nothing has been improved or optimized, and that's something that we see huge potential in.
Yeah, absolutely. From my perspective and from my experience and, friends and family, the home moving process and storage process seems to be stuck in the Stone Age. It has not really been a space that has been innovated or advanced recently.
Yep.
So you mentioned, looking for a tech solution to the house moving process. What inspired you to do this? Why specifically this task?
Well, firstly, if you would ask me 5 years or when I was studying at UCL, if you would ask me by then if I would ever think that I would be in this space, I would never thought. And I think it's quite common. But overall, the way we got into this space is simply, first I lived in London for the past 10 years. I personally, as a student, moved and stored a bunch of times, moved from one place to another. Every time there was a struggle, and I also had a lot of friends that gone through the struggle as well. But again, if we look back and try to find where the idea and actually Stackt originated from, it was simply during the pandemic back in 2021. Well, I graduated from uni in 19 in September 19, and the first the first 12 months I was actually building a completely different business, which was essentially certain community, a vetted and curated community of entrepreneurs of a certain level, that we would create a platform for them, a physical platform as such, that would allow them to meet, share, and connect in person. And that was specifically dedicated to a certain level of entrepreneurs. With the
More of a
minimal
networking kind of setup.
yeah, but more of a very curated and selected community. Because the thing was, when you're building an entrepreneur, in most of the cases, it's a very lonely journey.
Yeah.
And it is crucially important to have the right people around you. And I just, like, even putting the business aside, I just very genuinely believe that probably one of the most important and most precious things that any individual may have in his life, other than his health, is the right people around you.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter whether you do business or not, right? Having the right people around us, this is something that frames our perception around the world, frames our goals, our the reason why we wake up in the morning and do what we do. It's all framed little by little. It's not like you meet one person, but sometimes that happens as well.
Yeah.
But overall, having the certain community of people around you, even the people that you communicate with and spend your time with on a daily basis, frames what direction you're moving to as an individual and what you want to do and what you want to achieve in life. So I always, well, because I've moved from Baku, where I'm from, to UK at the age of 17, and that's something that I experienced myself, and that's the value of which I understood and felt myself, and this is why. When I graduated from university and being the president of a business society at UCL and being able to organize these large-scale events with a bunch of very high-level entrepreneurs and from the business world coming and speaking at the UCL, enabled me to firstly accumulate a certain network of people around me, that after which I wanted to build this community. So this is how it all started, but again, we got hit by pandemic back in 2020.
Awkward timing, right?
Super awkward timing. Like no one would think, right? And it was, looking back, it looks fun, but by then it was quite tough. You just graduate from a university, you just want to start your own beginnings, and then the world changes completely in a way that it hasn't changed for years or for decades.
Well, it speaks volumes that you were able to launch Stackt in such, economic and, let's say, a force majeure of a climate.
True.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like that by then. It was just like supernatural, even then, right? Like when it all happened, we were just about to launch this community. We had a really strong of selected high-profile members. We did a few events already, and we were planning to have our grand opening ceremony by then, which was planned in May. But then in March, London went into lockdown. I flew back to Baku, got stuck there for a few months. As borders closed, as a lot of students got stuck abroad. Well, I managed to come back for a month later, but the problem still persisted in a way that a lot of students couldn't come back, and they were forced to continue paying rent.
It's crazy.
Like with the rent prices in the UK, 1,500, 200, 300, 3,000 and over, depending on the flat and the area. It's crazy, and it's essentially just forced to pay because your personal belongings are in there. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And then when I managed to come back, we tried to pivot our idea initially with that community, but it didn't really go anywhere because there is definitely huge value when you do it offline, but when you do it online, it's not much of a value, and people weren't as excited as previously.
Right. Yeah.
And that was the time when we thought, okay, let's see what we can do else, and that's when we decided that it's time to well, let's just help the students out. We
Yeah.
made a list of a number of different services that we can help the students out, like terminating their contract,
Yeah.
moving or informing their bill providers, utility bills, changing or terminating that as well, moving them, storing items, etc., etc. Quickly enough, we understood that we can't do much of those services that are on the list because of the legal
Yeah.
obstacles,
For sure.
as we cannot terminate the contract on your behalf.
Yeah.
And what we realized is that the most, the demand was super high for those that were looking to move or just take their items out of vacate their apartments or student accommodations and put their items to a new apartment or storage.
So you learned that in practice. You realized that there was a demographic of people you wanted to help. You were trying to find out how you could help them, and it just funneled down to basically.
In a sense, it was happening super naturally. It's not that we were following. Although when looking back, probably the steps that we took by then, it just followed a certain lean startup building modeling or whatever.
Yeah.
But by then, of course, I mean, it was super natural. We just thought, okay, let's just see what we can help the students out.
And it happened organically, basically.
Super organically, right?
Yeah.
And we fast forward 3-4 months, we moved a bunch of people. I would say we've been to maybe over 50 or 60 apartments.
Wow.
Packing these items ourselves,
Wow.
which was super fun experience.
It must have been fun, but also quite tiring. I mean, I know from my perspective, when I've had to move, it's a very stressful experience. I want to just get it over and done with as soon as possible. I have no idea, Rashid, who to call. Who am I going to call? Man and van, you go on the internet, you see so many options. You don't know who to trust. You don't know how it works with insurances, if they break something, all sorts of things. It's not a very regulated space. And you're trusting these people with your life, basically. Not your actual life, but your belongings, your life's belongings, and your furniture and your private information, private belongings. It's a big deal, and it happens all the time, right? And I'm curious to know exactly, how does Stackt work exactly? Could you walk us through the user experience of making an inquiry and actually having you're going through the removal process, how does it differ from other removal companies and options out there?
Well, if you look at what the current solutions are, and I think for just better understanding, we need to split the Stackt has two primary services, one being storage, the other one is moving services, and the business model is slightly different in each. So if we start with moving services, whenever you're moving, what are the current options you have? Usually there are two options. You either, or maybe three. One is that you do everything by yourself, which means that asking your friends, asking your, and it's super tiring and,
it's a lot to ask these days.
A lot to ask, for sure, definitely. I mean, when Stackt is out, there is definitely a lot to ask.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah.
Well, that's the first option. The second option is you can go to, you can try man-in-the-van services, and I used to refer to them as dodgy man-in-the-van services because you never know who's coming.
Yeah. They
usually don't speak your language. They don't have insurance. If they break something, nothing's happened. What if they just load all your items of the past 5 years in London and just drive away?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, there's nothing.
You wouldn't be able to find them, specifically with the current. I'm not sure to what extent you'd be able to get help out of police or out of that, but it's quite a tricky situation to be
Definitely.
at. And the third option is just using expensive but well-established removal companies. Still kind of mediocre service, but it's going to be old school, and you're going to get some kind of service and assurance that they will do that. But it's going to cost you simple as £1,500 for a single one bedroom or two bedroom move.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Super expensive.
Because you look, I mean, I've been through that process myself, and I've contacted those kind of companies because, especially for family as well, you want to make sure you trust the people and that they've got good reviews. But when they give you a quote, it's crazy what they charge. And it doesn't seem right or ethical that it should be that expensive. But maybe they're leveraging on, the fact that trust goes a long way in this industry. And, I thought that was quite alarming, actually.
There is quite a big gap in there. And I understand why the costs with those expensive removal companies are so high. But again, as a result, from the customer perspective, what it appears to be is that you have one option of dealing with the terrible service of these dodgy managed advanced services that you can never trust. And you definitely don't want to go through that service. The other one is you just have to overpay. And this is where we come along.
Right.
When you look at why that happens that way is because neither of these two options, they use any technology to optimize the processes. And it's just all old school, inefficient, super expensive processes that they're relying on, which is then reflected on the price which is presented to the customer. Now, when we are referring to what we do and what's our value proposition in here is but with the use of that technology that we're implementing, and it's not rocket science as such, right, in these days, but what it allows us to get is to bring down, by automating a lot of processes and improving the efficiency, what it allows us to bring the price down for the customer while getting a very satisfactory service. I mean, a great service that you would love is just because you have, you are being notified and guided through the entire process since you contact us up until you're moved with customer service in place if you want to place an order over the phone or do it online, or you want to speak to someone, or you want to see where the movers are because you get a notification, you can track them on your phone, you can see their location, you get the notifications of all along the journey from the time when they're on their way to you, when they come and load your items, when they unload, when they take your items to the new destination, etc., etc. So, and that allows us to be probably not as cost-wise, not as the same as these managed advanced services, but just slightly higher.
For much more refined and bespoke service, basically.
Absolutely, yeah. But you're getting like A to Z service from professional movers that are uniformed. We're probably the only company in the industry that have body cams.
You have body cams?
We have body cams, which are used for security and assurance purposes and quality control purposes. And we pay a lot of attention to that. And because again, our main, at the end of the day, what we want to do and what excites us a lot, because it's such an old school industry in space, with all these small additions, what we're trying to do is just to create a very seamless experience for the customers. Probably we are the only one company in the industry that sends you flowers when you move to a new place.
Very nice.
We've partnered with biggest flower delivery company in the UK and Europe that a lot of people may know about, which is Bloom and Wild. And what happens is, as soon as you move to a new place, in 2 days' time, you get a box, co-branded box in your letterbox at your new place with a small note from us, with flowers, first of all, and a small note from me personally saying that thanks for using us. Congratulations to moving to a new place and the new beginnings. And if you really enjoy the process, please leave us a review, or if you have any suggestions, please, this is my personal email. They have my personal email that any customer can email me personally and suggest any improvements to how the movers did. And that obsession about the customer experience is something that we're working really, really hard upon, and something that puts us aside from all the current providers, because usually what you would expect is that terrible experience when you're moving, and that's something that we want to flip.
You want to make it a more pleasurable experience.
Absolutely, it doesn't have to be, right?
And it's a nice touch, It's a nice touch to have to receive flowers when you move somewhere new,
Specifically from a moving company that you wouldn't expect, for
exactly. Sure. And a message from you shows how hands-on you are.
Yeah.
And also you look for the feedback and stuff. So from what I'm gathering, by using tech-based solutions, you are reducing your operating expenses, and therefore you can price more effectively, more efficiently, open up a new marketplace, and of course you are paying a lot of attention to, the reliability of your movers, right?
Absolutely.
And you've described this service as an Uber-based removal service, the way it operates similar to how Uber would operate. I'm curious. How do you ensure quality and reliability in the movers that you work with? And is there an onboarding process? Is there a criteria that you...
There is one thing to remember before we move on to that, is that moving is only one out of two main services that we provide. Although the even major service, and we generate over 50% of our revenue from storage services.
Wow. Okay.
And the same if the business model is slightly different in a way that the problem that we're solving with storage services is similar, that in a way it's super old school space, right? You have this bunch of storage services around London, and if you need to store your items, whether there's not enough space at home or you have some piece of furniture that yours, but there's nowhere to place your or to keep your landlord's furniture, or there's some skis that you don't use throughout the year, and again, space is just becoming a very scarce resource in London these days.
It's more of a problem, especially in new developments in London.
Yeah.
They don't build enough storage space. I mean, you got the traditional builds and homes and houses, but new apartments in London, there's very
tiny.
Small allocation for
Absolutely.
storage.
And there's not enough space there at all. And for that reason, essentially, that's the problem that we're solving, as opposed to you taking your physically, again, finding some man in the van services that will take your items to your storage facility, renting a storage unit, paying a lot of money for that, because the storage units are super expensive. You'd be paying £50 per week for a 20 square foot unit at like Safe Store at King's Cross. And that's not even too central. And every time you need something back, you physically need to go back and forth.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's actually the biggest headache.
Exactly.
To actually have to go there and go back and find a way to transport your things.
And what we do with that is you don't have to lift a finger, literally, as that. All you have to do is just go to our website, select the space, how much space you need, and just give us the list of items that you want to store. And then we'll come and collect everything right from your doorstep without you lifting a finger. We'll collect everything from your doorstep, take it to our storage facilities, and you will get a digital list of all your items.
Wow.
And at any point in time, you can request a certain item to be delivered back to you in a matter of 48 hours.
That's incredible. I already know how much I'd like to use that service, because I have storage. I use storage units. I'm always going back and forth.
And there's even one more, even more exciting thing about it, which is price.
Yeah.
The price for the same amount of space that you're renting with us, in comparison to this traditional old school storage facilities, is twice as affordable, twice as low.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're getting more of a service for half the price? For
the tariffs that you're paying, yes.
Wow.
So essentially, for the 20 square foot unit, you'd be paying around £19 with us, as opposed to paying £50. It's over 50%.
And there's so much more utility in working with you guys.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow.
And that what makes us different. Again, it's not like we are creating a completely new service out of nowhere, right? We are taking what's already operating, what's existent, and just by introducing the certain technology and optimizing the processes and slightly amending the business model, we're just making the same service, the same old service, just more affordable and way more convenient to the customer. And that's what the vision is. It's the same what Uber did with the ride-hailing industry as such, right? You used to have this bunch of small companies or just individuals that are riding you around, and you had this black cabs. So what they did is just consolidated this individual riders under one platform, and provided and drove the price down and made the service way more convenient thanks to its technological integration. And that's something that we're doing with the moving and storage industry.
Rashid, it really sounds like, and thank you for explaining that to me, because obviously I knew more about the whole removal process.
Yeah.
I didn't know enough about the storage process and part of the business, and to hear that it accounts for, equates to 50% of your revenue, I can understand why now, because it sounds like such a market disruptor. Like I don't know why anyone else would store their belongings differently. So.
I mean, there's a big work that's still to be done in terms of the market education.
Yeah.
Because a lot more people, of course, a lot of people know about traditional storage facilities, and not a lot of people know that these services as ours exist.
So it's about educating people. It's about marketing it correctly and appropriately.
Yeah, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of educating the market in that sense.
Rashid, I honestly, it's not just because you're on the podcast, but I wish I knew this before. I could have definitely benefited from this.
Well, now you know, so it's never late.
Now I know. And Rashid, I must offer you some tea. some nice
Wow.
traditional Iraqi tea, if you like tea.
Absolutely. I'm
Yeah.
from Azerbaijan. We love tea, right?
there we go then. There we
Definitely.
go.
And specifically if that's Iraqi tea, I love it.
Yeah. It's made with a lot of love and care. So
Absolutely. Thanks a lot.
hope you like it. And help yourself whenever you want anymore.
Thank
We
you.
have a lot going.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So, okay. I'm curious about, and a lot of people,
Oh man, I love this.
you like it?
Absolutely.
Actually,
so good.
Cheers.
Cheers.
To revolutionizing the storage and home moving industry. I'll try as well. So, what a lot of people will want to know is, a lot of people have amazing ideas. And I have a lot of friends that I speak to all the time. People always just have an idea. But it takes a lot for somebody to realize their idea and work on it and make it a reality and go through the whole venture capital process if they need to. I want to know more, and I think a lot of people want to know more about the whole VC process. Starting off with, how much have you raised so far through VC companies?
So Stackt has been operating for close to 3 years now. The first time we started raising external capital was when we've been 12 months into the operations. So we raised over the past 2 years. And over the past 2 years, we raised somewhere around 1.2 to 1.3 million. Which is not, yes, we have some numbers and we have investors that we're super thankful for sharing this journey with us and believing in what we're building. But again, of course, there are a lot more people that are raising a lot more than we did. But
as students just out of university with a new concept, it's one hell of an achievement. It's very hard. I work in real estate finance, but we do work with VC companies as well, and I know very well how difficult it is. So to hear that, just out of university, you're able to raise 1.2 million is one hell of an achievement, actually.
Well, there's a long way to go still for us, right? We're still at the super early stages.
But it's a good start.
It's a good start for sure, yeah.
Yeah, because it's one hell of an idea. So I want to know, of course, part of that process, what was that experience like, navigating the whole venture capital world from, initial pitching to actually achieving the funding? What did you do? Did someone advise you, speak to this company, speak to that company? Are there brokers for that? How much information can you tell us about that process?
Well, firstly, it's not that every business needs external capital, right? Because I think some people have this perception or misconception that you always need to raise external capital, and it's just because it's just fancy and cool. And I don't think that, well, it may look super fancy, but it's just once you go to the VC market and start raising finance, the rules of the game change. And that's something you need to keep in mind. Because your decision-making changes, you have to align with the investors that come along, and there is a constant, which is probably a good thing. Of course, it's a good thing in terms of the constant pressure for growth, and I think an individual deciding to take some money in has to make a decision whether he wants to take that route or not. It doesn't mean that one route is better than another. It's just completely different two stories.
There are things to consider.
There's so many,
yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
There's so many good businesses. There's so many successful businesses that got to the point that raised zero external capital. But it's always an individual case. In our case, personally, when we launched Stackt and we got 10 to 12 months in operation, we were doing pretty good results anyways.
So you had a good balance sheet to show.
We had a good balance. We did, I think, over around 160, 170K in revenue for the first 12 months, 10 to 12 months, which was pretty good. We had a small team of 3 to 4 people. And my understanding with my co-founder, because I have a technical co-founder, was we had to make a call. And the call was we either continue building a dividend-based business out of it and bring it probably to a few million in revenue, which will generate us a really good lifestyle business as such. Or we go towards, we raise some external funding and take the story global. And the call why we had to make a decision was whether we want to build something big, something that will that won't operate in the UK alone, but it will be changing the way industry operates and disrupt the very old school moving and storage industry and take it global. And for that, you need external funding to accelerate your growth. To scale that, to have the right people on board, to have the right advisors and just the right skill set and knowledge that will enable you to do that. And because we thought, well, we were by then 24, 25 years old. So we said, okay, we kind of, this is the best time of our lives, right? We have the maximum energy, we can sleep less, work more. We have a bunch of cool ideas, and we would rather take this leap of faith and build something that would be super exciting to us. Because we weren't super excited about building a mediocre business that will just generate a few million. Yes, it's a risk. No one knows it until now, like unless you make an exit, right? It's there's so many factors that you're dependent on. It doesn't really matter how much you raise, whether the businesses that go bankrupt once they raise hundreds of million. But it's a risk that if you are capable in managing, if you believe in what you're doing, if you are persistent, resilient enough and believe in what you're doing, then it's worth taking it because that's where the actual reward comes along. And we just said, okay, that kind of looks like an exciting challenge and we'll take that on. And that was a decision why we decided to take external funding. So we just, and that was necessary to infuse cash into the business so that we can grow the team, we didn't do any marketing for the first 12 months and after the first raise. So we raised this 1.2 million and we'll be closing another $500,000 over the next month or so. We raised this amount over the 2 rounds. So the first $500,000 round that we did by then, we just started reaching out to investors quickly enough. Because we had a really strong traction on the team, we got a few term sheets from VCs. Because again, we had some traction, really good numbers and revenue generating business, profitable business as such.
To hit north of 100,000 in turnover in your first year without any marketing is great.
Yep, it was exciting. Again, it's just the way we were promoting that was through university societies, partnerships with various real estate agencies, word of mouth, which played quite a key role because once you build something, people, and in our space, people tend to ask for recommendations. So a lot of people just came through, we moved one person and then they just recommended to their friends. So you have this constant inflow of customers coming in. And essentially, yeah, so as soon as we decided to start raising, it took us some time. It wasn't, of course, overnight. It took us a few months to raise, but we eventually got raised we raised $500,000 from 3 VCs, one UK-based, one Europe-based, and one US-based.
It's interesting. It's a common theme where, a lot of good ideas are born out of the, student environment, Of course, Facebook was a famous example of that, where you're able to use, a great database of people you already know and your university and other universities, and solving problems for students tend to have, has a carry throughout other aspects of society. So it's quite interesting to see that was similar with you, and it allowed you to, get that strong balance sheet after a year of operations. So on that basis, how did you approach the whole valuation process when you were speaking to VCs, when you were speaking to investors? Obviously, you're going to be speaking along the lines of, we want to raise this much, the company's worth this much. How did you go through that?
It is very difficult to value the company at early stages.
Yeah.
Right, incredibly difficult, close to impossible. Because you don't have, well, in our case, we had some numbers, but in most of the cases, businesses may not even generate revenue. So it's more about how strong is the team, how big is the potential, what's the market conditions, and other companies raising at that stage. I think, and this is something more or less depending on on your traction, depending on the stage and the team. at early stages, it's not like you're valuing the business that you would do in private equity, where you would do this cash flow analysis and looking the projections and discount and everything.
And have a multiple on that.
Yeah. It's more because companies just started, right? There's not much data that you can rely on. So in that case, it's more of a kind of standard range that you would be raising, depending on, again, how, where are you raising, who are you raising from, what industry your business operates in, and what traction you've got, and who you have on board as a team. I think these are the main factors that would affect. And there are different ways you value that, but overall, in our case, and I think with it's not that you are the one as a founder setting the. There's a very nice saying which says, "Let the market decide." So you start speaking to investors, and they send you the term sheet, and then you see what's the
most competitive or
exactly.
most appropriate offer.
Yeah.
So Rashid, how would you advise somebody who's got a good business idea, if it's a friend, family, colleague, and they're at inception, they've just thought of it, they really believe in it, they really think it's going to be something that's going to be a market disruptor, like what you've come up here with Stackt? How would you advise them on what the next step should be for them?
I think, well, the environment affects a lot in a way that VC environment has changed a lot over the past few years. Thank you. Even when we were raising our first $500,000 and then the remaining over $700K that we closed quite recently, and the one that we're still going to close, or the remaining part of which will be closing over the next few months. It very much, because you probably know that over the past 2023 was just a very tough year for fundraising. A lot of businesses dropped their valuations, were doing extension rounds. A lot of businesses just gone bankrupt. It was really, really tough time, and we gone through that.
You weathered that storm.
It took us way longer than we initially anticipated to close our second round, which was a seed round. And the market is kind of recovering, but it's still, there is some time that it would be required to recover fully. But for those that have an idea, I wouldn't really, personally, it's just way better to go and build it with your own funds if you have any, or maybe your business idea doesn't really require as much as funding as in our case, because it didn't really require as much. I was fortunate to have my technical co-founder who built the first iterations of our algorithmic calculator, which allowed you to get the pricing in as soon as possible based on the volume and the main website, the first iteration of the website and everything. So my suggestion would be just go and build and try to get some traction.
Have the right team, have the right people, delegate the roles.
At the early stages, you won't even need such a big of a team to do that. If you can do it with your own hands, because if you have the team, you either need to incentivize them somehow, i.e. giving them quite a large chunk of equity if you cannot pay them in return. So that means that they're becoming more of your co-founders, and you cannot have, you technically have, but probably won't be a good idea having over 4 co-founders. So the suggestion is just go out and try to build a minimal viable product, as they call it, an MVP, that will just prove to yourself and the market that there is a service that you built that is under demand, that has a demand for it. Before launching Stackt, when we were moving people with our own hands, we had nothing that Stackt has today. I don't remember, we had some basic website, but it was all manual. There was no technology, there was no CRM, there was no business processes, automations, etc. Everything was done manually, but didn't mean that we couldn't move those people before launching Stackt. So my point is, you can always build, depending on what you're building, of course, if that's a deep tech or pharmacy or something that would require a few million to raise at quite a high valuations, at early stages in order to prove something, and that's a different conversation. But if that's something that you can prove at the early stages, because the earlier you take money, the lower your valuation. Right. Or in other words, the earlier you take the external funding in, the higher the percentage you give away as a founder.
If you're going to raise externally, you have to go in at the right point then, when you've maximized everything you could
absolutely
possibly do yourself. And did you feel that when you were raising funds with Stackt?
Yes. I mean, usually they say that it's do not raise money until you really need to. Right, because the later you raise, the better the outcome for you. So there's a better valuation, the lower the percentage you give away as a founder, because the business is more mature, lower the risk for the potential investor coming in, which means that it just benefits everyone.
It's a key point. I think a lot of people overlook that. They have a concept, they want to realize the concept as soon as possible, and they just think they need to raise funds and raise capital.
And that's exactly. And that again, that makes the person's journey more difficult. Because when you have just a concept, going to an investor, usually investors even today get a bunch of different term sheet, the decks, ideas, and they're kind of, for them, any business that already proved and worked and has some traction is way more of a viable investment as opposed to some just idea. Because idea is usually worth nothing. Yeah. It's the execution that's worth. And it's a big misconception that don't share your idea with anyone, because at the end of the day, it's not that what we're building is rocket science, but the execution of it is quite a complicated chunk of the process, because there's so many. I mean, but now in discussing it, you may not imagine how many processes and the automations and the technology that's required to automate all these processes, or manpower to build these processes in a way. And there's a huge misconception that ideas are worth so much. If you haven't done anything, it's just an idea, and you want to raise at a few million valuation, that would be, at least in the current environment, we're not in 2021 or 2020, it would be quite a tough task to overtake.
And actually, you bring on a few themes about IP. Let's talk about IP a little bit. How did you treat this concept when it comes to your IP? Has this been patented? Have you protected the concept? What are the risks of other companies doing the same?
There are two ways that you can work or approach this IP protection. One thing, very much depends on what you're building and what you do, right? In our space, our primary IP it goes around our algorithmic AI-based calculator, which allows us to, with over 95% accuracy, calculate the cost of your move based on what level or what floor your apartment is, how many boxes or furniture you have, whether you need dismantling or assembly, what's the distance and the traffic at that specific preferred time and day that you selected you want to move. So based on all these data points and based on over 5,000 sales that we did over the past 3 years, based on all this data, we're able to accurately, as much as possible, calculate, again, subject to the customer giving us the accurate information, to estimate the cost of the move, right? Which is way better than going to some managed advanced services that would just say that, we'll charge you on an hourly basis, and they will on purpose try to delay the process by hours so that they can get as much money as possible. So now when it comes to IP, you either have that, but the thing is, when you're patenting something, you're exposing it to everyone. Well, exactly. Right? You're exposing to everyone, and it's quite easy. Again, I'm not an IP expert, so I won't be the right person to do that, or to discuss or give recommendations on that. But in my perception is that if that's something that you can post, and usually IPs is something that you can post, you're exposing how your technology works, it's quite easy to amend it and then avoid, build something super similar by adding these certain features. So we at Stackt, and we're just not exposing that as such. We know our internal know-how, and that we prefer to keep private. as a private company.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. A lot of that IP is what you can do as a team, and the capacity within the team, the know-how.
Absolutely.
And yeah. So very interesting to learn more about that. I want to move back to the regulatory landscape.
Yeah.
And I just, as you mentioned, moving services and storage services often face, a lot of regulatory challenges. Have you come across any regulatory hurdles, especially in this country, in the UK? What are they like? Did you have to have some kind of licenses to get this going?
I think we are in a lucky space in a way that moving and storage industry is not doesn't require a lot of doesn't have a lot of regulations as such, which makes our lives easier in comparison to the other industries when building a certain solution. So in our case, there are no major major whether licenses or regulations that you have to comply with. Of course, we do everything that we could in terms of vetting, and that gets back to your initial question in terms of vetting the movers, ensuring that these are professional movers, they're going through training, customer service, and DBS checks, background check, license check, vehicle check.
Because even Uber had a problem with this in the UK specifically.
Only after that they gain access to be able to the platform, which allows them to accept the jobs that comes along the way. So in our case, I wouldn't say that it's heavily regulated space.
It's an advantage,
of course,
a lower barrier to entry for you guys.
Yes, lower barrier to entry for other businesses trying to compete with us, but the problem for the other players is that because the entire business is, it's not as straightforward business as any SaaS product to a certain extent, or maybe a bunch of AI companies that are emerging now. They're more or less built on a similar engine that are quite, to a certain extent. Again, I'm not an AI expert, but to my perception, it's a lot of businesses that are emerging right now. They're very easy to replicate. Yeah. In our case, the advantage of building such a complex business is not something that you can sit and replicate from your parents' house with a computer on your laps. Because in order to come to where we are today, you have to go through the entire process
which is
of
very
building
complex
this process.
By the sounds of things. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. You need to know how it works internally. You need to go through all those hypothesis testings and know-how and those insights and data points that we gathered from these 5,000 orders that we did to date and will be doing over the next 2 years. So for any other business or any other individuals that want to compete with us, it would just they have to go through the entire journey that we went through over the past 2 years in order to come to where we are today. And we'll always be upfront. And the more we go further away, the higher the advantage and the obstacle to entry for any other businesses. And that's the advantage of complex businesses. That yes, it may be difficult and complicated at start, but once you sort it out, it brings on and builds your competitive advantage and the barrier to entry for any other competitors that want to compete with you.
So Rashid, I want to know, it is called the humans of finance. So we want to know more about the people and the humans behind these ideas, these businesses, these all sorts of, because we speak to all sorts of people. It's always good to seek inspiration in their stories. And I'd like to know a lot more about you and your childhood. You were raised in Azerbaijan, Baku?
In Azerbaijan, very sunny city of Baku.
Yeah. And what was that like for you? And you mentioned you were there till you were 17, so you basically had your whole education or until university.
School, until I graduated from school, high school. I was born in Baku. I was born in Baku in a very entrepreneurial family. So my dad was an entrepreneur, and he still is. And our family, my background is our family business, which the core, it's a different businesses, but the core of which is boutique travel agency in the premium segment. The company's been operating it's older than me. It's been operating for over 30 years.
Wow.
And we specialize in building and curating custom-made journeys and travel journeys all around the world, specifically to distinct places, not just basic as Europe, but rather Asia, US, Africa, Europe included, but it's more curated to a certain premium segment that we're working on. I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family, and throughout my, interesting. What was the question again? What was my childhood like?
Yeah, how would you describe your childhood? So you grew up in a very entrepreneurial environment, which had obviously had a big impact on you.
Yeah.
Because to be so young and freshly out of university and already being in that mindset, I'm curious to work out where that came from. So very much your family environment.
I think I'm super confident. Not that I'm thinking. I'm super confident that I'm super lucky and fortunate with my parents. That gave me this opportunity, because if that wasn't for them, I couldn't come to study at the UK, which was quite an expensive thing. Specifically considering that internationals have to pay 3 times or 4 times as much as the locals. And I think starting at school in Baku and being grown in a very entrepreneurial kind of family, one thing that I would say made me realize, and that was taught by my dad to me very early, is setting goals and objectives and achieving them and making them happen.
Not just sitting on them, making sure you go for them.
Exactly. And it started from as early as, I remember the story when Apple was just emerging, and I was probably around just over 10 years old. And Apple was just kind of starting out, and they had this iPod, if you remember this iPod with the round thing.
Yeah, the first one that came out.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember whether that was the first one but I saw this device, which was capable of having thousands of songs on one device, which was extremely unusual for
the time. It was crazy, yeah.
Yeah, because usually you had a phone like Panasonic or something, and that would have like 3-4 songs at max.
Or even a Walkman before, you have to just have a CD carrying in your pocket all the
exactly.
time. Yeah.
And having like on a small device, bunch of songs, like hundreds of thousands, that was like a crazy idea. Yeah. So I saw it, and at essentially some of our family friends had it. And then I came to my dad at some point, and that was just before Christmas or New Year's. And that was like October or November maybe. And I essentially asked him if he can get me one as a as a New Year present. And because my dad was himself, he studied he studied at Moscow State University during Soviet Union, which was essentially a Harvard for the during Soviet Union times. For him, it was super important that he was always encouraging us to read books, literature, and also all the kids at family had to graduate from top schools in terms of the university. He literally had this list of the best universities in the world, the QS rating, like the top 10, and he said, you definitely have, all of us, and we had 3 siblings. All of us have to graduate from one of those. Yeah. And this is why my sister studied in Swiss, my brother graduated from UCL as well, oh, wow. And this is why I couldn't go anywhere worse than UCL. There we go. So essentially, he gave, in return to my ask for the gift for the New Year's, he gave me the book, and he said, because that way he wanted me to encourage to read this book, and he gave me the book and said, if you're gonna read this book until New Year's, and every day you will very briefly tell what you read during the day, I'll buy you that book. And every single day, literally.
You must have really wanted this iPod, huh?
Oh, for sure. Every single day. Yeah. Every single day I was literally coming to him after when he was coming back from work and after dinner, coming and just telling him what I read during the day, very briefly.
What was the book?
I wouldn't be able to say that I don't know the name in English. Oh, okay. I know that it's in Russian.
What was it about? What did your dad really want you to know?
It was literature. It was like a literature. I can send you the name after. I know that in Russian. The book was in Russian. I studied at school in Russian. Yeah. It was "Последний из Магикан." So, and I was literally coming every single day, even when we had guests or some party at home, for example, or we had some event going on. I was literally super persistent to come and prove him that I did it. I didn't manage to get the book because the New Year's approached earlier.
I came too quick.
But up until I got my gift and present, I was literally coming to him every single day, and essentially having that persistence, and got it in return. And I think, well, it may look and sound funny and interesting to a certain extent, but it taught me something from very early ages, in a sense that if you have a certain goal, if that's a realistic goal, right? There is no reason why you cannot get that. So if you really want to achieve something in life, everything is under your control. It's a matter of your resilience. It's a matter of how much you are ready to learn, how much you're ready to sacrifice in order to get it. And I think that was quite a big lesson, because it's similar kind of, it's not a situation in a sense, but I had this a number of times in my life when I was trying to achieve something, but I couldn't get that from the first time. And I had to take another try, although despite the time, maybe some of them may require another year, and that's before I got to UCL, or some of them may shorter, but it's proving to yourself again and again that you are, because that builds an internal confidence in you. And plus
the resilience that you mentioned.
And the resilience, exactly.
It's key.
Absolutely, because you know that you are capable of doing that. And the more you do that, the more resilient you are and the more confident you are, that you build that mentality of not giving up. Sometimes it sounds very easy, but when you are building a venture, maybe even in life, right? It doesn't really matter. You want to get to know a lady that you like, or you want to build something, you want to raise funding, right? Well, when we raised, in total, probably over the past these 2 rounds, we spoke to over 100 or 120 investors, and we only have 6, which is not a small number, but we have 6 VCs on board and plus a few angels. Yeah. But that's just like less than 10%, even less. And when I got to UCL, because I graduated from school in Baku, then I came I graduated from school, and then I essentially the last few years at high school I was fully focused on preparation for the university, which was quite a tough call, right? Getting to one of the best universities in the world. Yeah. And considering that I was studying in Russian at high school, I never studied in English. In terms of my English was pretty good, but I didn't have that academic, of course, right? And then
in the academic sense, it's a completely different language, I can imagine.
Absolutely,
yeah.
And when I got to, when I came here, because I studied 11 years at school, so I needed 1 extra year to be able to apply for a university. So I did this course, which was at UCL itself. It was like it's called UPCH course. Which was a compressed 2-year course into 1 year, super intense, where I had like math, economics, English, and philosophy or something. And you are essentially, it's a super intense course, super complicated. Again, you're doing it at UCL. And when I finished it, so essentially I got a conditional offer from UCL, which was 70%. But when I essentially passed my exams, at the end I got 67 overall, which was 3% short. 70 in the UK standards, essentially A. I got in something in between B and a B plus or something. 3% short. I came to, and nevertheless, I got to all the other universities. I got to Queen Mary, I think I got to KCL, I got to SOAS, a bunch of other universities that were ready to accept me. But I really wanted to get to UCL because I've been working on that for the past 3 years, including the last 2 years of high school in Baku. When I came to the admissions officer at UCL, that I'm super grateful. He used to be actually he turned out to be my professor later when I already got to UCL, and even now we're still in contact, and he's super supportive, always shares my, when we post something that we raised or did that, X and
Well, you must
Y
be
and
proud
Z.
to see it.
Richard Pettinger.
What was his name?
Richard Pettinger. He used to be the head of the course that I was applying to.
Yeah.
And when I came to Richard, and he used to be head of course and the admissions officer, I believe. I essentially said, look, I have 3% short. What are my options? And he said, there are two options here. You either go to one of the universities that you got accepted to for bachelor's and then transition at the end of the year, but you will still come back at year one. Or you do another foundation year at SOAS, which was essentially just across.
Either way, it was going to be another year.
It has to be another year, which meant that another year of financing and another year of essentially all my friends got to university already because my friends that were back with me at school, they already got to university right away.
Yeah.
And the ones that at least applied in Baku, and they were already transitioning to second year. But here I'm still kind of trying to get to university. And again, back to my point of having and being super fortunate and grateful to my parents. When I came back to my parents and to my dad and said, look, I've been working on this goal for the past 2-3 years. I'm 3% short here, but I really want to go to UCL. I want to prove myself that I'm capable of getting to the top university in the world. But that would mean that I need to do another year. Another year of financing my expenses, flats.
Additional pressure because you don't want that year to go to waste.
Of course, but I was super confident that I'll do it. I said, well, I'll do whatever it costs, but I'll get to UCL. Just believe in me, and I will get in there. Wow. And again, thanks for their support. They gave me that option. I went to SOAS. And that was a different story. SOAS didn't want to accept me because they were saying that we're taking you to bachelor's already. Why do you want to do another foundation years at SOAS? Yeah. I had to explain them I'm not ready because I couldn't say them that I'm not going. I'm coming to do foundation at SOAS to go to UCL,
else,
right?
Yeah.
So I had to prove them first, and then I had to prove to Home Office as well because I'm kind of the same year. Right, so
I'm thinking this guy just wants to stay in England or something.
Yeah, like why this guy is doing the same. He's not going for bachelor's, but he's staying at the same level of study. Yeah. So fortunately, I got through all these hurdles and got to SOAS, which was a fantastic year. Got to know amazing people, amazing professors. I had amazing modules that I took there. And eventually, I graduated from SOAS foundation course with a distinction of 76%, although I had 70% offer from UCL, and I got to UCL 2 years later after graduation. And that was another time when I proved to myself that it may not work out from the first time, but if you really believe in yourself, if you're really resilient enough, you can get it there. And then essentially I never, even for a minute, I never regretted that decision that I took another year, that I studied for another year, because once got to UCL, I became the president of a business society, which allowed me to firstly have such an amazing team and people, get exposed to these people, build my network of this incredible people that I was fortunate to invite. And most of those speakers that I was inviting to come and speak at UCL turned out to be my mentors, my friends, which again had a huge impact in my perception as an individual living in London, and just building my personal character. And after that, having graduated from UCL, I got, again, my journey with UCL didn't finish because that was the year when Home Office got rid of this entrepreneur visa, and you had to apply for a startup visa. And for startup visa, they gave this right to universities, and UCL became my endorser for Stackt, for the first business, and then Stackt. Which allowed me to get to my to start a visa and then the innovator visa that I'm on at now. So that was another time when again it was hurdles that you kind of work really, really hard to get it. The same when you again raise. Then when we were raising another round, when we were raising another round, those 2023 last year, terrible year for fundraising, right? Like we have 500 growth, year-to-year growth, 500, right? Which is an incredible number. But just because there are some factors that are outside your personal control, it's just like there's some crisis in the space, and very difficult to raise funding. You look at your numbers, it's like everything is incredible, but you still don't know why it's so difficult to raise. But you have an amazing team, you're growing, but if you made that decision to go to this VC route, you have to take it till end, right? Because if you have the VC money, your investors are expecting they will do at least 100x return out of it. So which means that a constant growth. And you have the growth and you need some external funding which is supernatural and expected, but there is no source of this money coming in. And also it's another, we spoke to a bunch of investors. Fortunately, we gone through that and again, once again, proved that we are able to overcome these challenges that we have on the way. Of course, as you continue growing, these challenges, they will never end, right? And probably the importance and majority will get even bigger, but it's a good thing to continue proving to yourself one after another that you're capable of achieving these goals that you have in front of you.
So Rashid, your story is a strong story of self-belief, determination, resilience, as you say. I always talk about the 2 Ps, persistence prevails. And clearly, in your case, regardless of what you wanted to achieve, whether it was to get that iPod or to go to UCL, no matter how lengthy the process would be, 1 or 2 years, and then the additional financing and stuff, you got there in the end, and there was a lot of added value in going to UCL. The network it provided you, the advice it was able to give you, and the people you still speak to, like Richard that you mentioned. So it's a fascinating story to hear about, really in practice, how far resilience and self-belief can take you.
Totally.
You mentioned mentors, role models. Did you have any specific role models or mentors that you worked with or looked up to, or that you get advice from now?
For me, again, with respect to the role models or mentors, there's no one specific person, I'd say. But for me personally, because people were always so important for me, not in the business context, but overall just a personal and life context. I always believed and thought that for me personally, something that impacted a lot were the people that I knew personally, and the people that achieved amazing results and gone through the journey themselves. Because usually when you read about some stories in the book, it may be motivating, but I strongly believe that the story of an individual that inspires you, that you know personally, would have a way higher impact as any other story just written in a book about someone else in the other end of the world. And of course, that being said, I had a number of people that I was super, super fortunate enough to get to know personally, that were super inspiring, motivating, and supportive throughout the entire journey. And I think, and there are a number of people that they may not be that well known, and some of them are well known, some of them are not. But because I know their story, and because there's some of them that built their life and businesses or fortune just from nothing, being even specifically those that built it without even having that fundamental things that I had. Like, I was super fortunate to be born in a family that was able to afford me studying at UCL or coming to UK. But I know a lot of people that didn't have that. And for me, it was like, if an individual that didn't even have those abilities got to made such a result and got to a certain level, then I have no reason whatsoever to not be able to achieve those objectives that I have, right? Because essentially my starting point is way kind of closer, or way more higher to a certain extent. Was the right term in there? But I feel like you get my point.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And lastly, Rashid, just looking ahead to the year ahead,
Yeah.
What goals do you have for yourself and Stackt in the next 12 months?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Well, of course, in the business context with Stackt, the goals as a business, in a business context, is simply as continue growing. We have certain KPIs that we want and we will hit over the next year in terms of the revenue growth, number of customers. We will launch one international location, which is super exciting. Won't reveal as yet which one is that, but we already have one selected. And probably getting as close, as a business, getting close to profitability, which will put us in a very strong position as a VC-backed business for our Series A round, which is directly tied to our growth KPIs that we have to hit. So that's in the business context. In the personal context, and again, Stackt takes 95 over, or maybe 99 plus percent of my focus. So it's very much linked to what I'm doing on a daily basis. But I think it is a very exciting journey for myself, right? Because as a founder or as any individual that builds something, that means a constant journey of a continuous learning curve. Because the more you never stop learning. Because the building any venture is such a dynamic environment. Whether you are building 1 million startup or 10 or 100 or billion, it's just there's so many things that are happening around you all the time that you need to learn to navigate through these challenges and hurdles. And every single stage of the company requires a new set of skills, knowledge, in order to move to and progress to the next step. You cannot use the same way you were operating your business or leading your team when you had 4 people on board in comparison to when you had 15 people on board, because now you have a lot more people, a lot more processes. The teamwork now works differently. And what makes it exciting is that in order to grow, you as a founder, you always continue learning and gaining new skills, whether with respect to building sales teams, new processes, fundraising, or finance. It's just like you look back. For me, it's the best indication is when you look back, like 3 months back, and you feel like you're a completely different person. Yeah. Literally, like every 3 months, every quarter,
constant
you look
evolution.
Back.
Huh?
Yeah, it's like you feel like you matured so much since then, and it's a never-ending process. It takes it out of you, right?
Yeah,
exactly. And you just need to be super open to that. Always being open-minded, open to new ideas, new insights, new learnings. Because as you continue growing the business growth, and it's like a living organism, there's so much stuff that's happening around it, and internally and externally, and you have to learn how to, and specifically when you're doing it the first time. When you're doing it, when you've done that multiple times, or even the second time, it's way easier because you know how that operates. When you're doing that for the first time, you're kind of blindfolded to a certain extent, unless you open the curtain out by speaking to the right people that will guide you, or reading the certain articles, or understanding or learning just by your mistakes on how that one thing operates. Yeah. And I think that's my personal goal, and also just enjoying the process as you grow. Because it's a really tough journey, right? It's the more you do business, the bigger the company gets, the more you understand why sometimes people say you have to be crazy to build to do your own business. For sure. And the longer you go, the better you understand it. Yeah. But the paradoxical thing about it is that although it's tough, it's something that you wouldn't change to anything else. It's like there's nothing else that you would do other than going. Although it's tough, but that reward, it's exhilarating. It's exhilarating. Yeah, exactly. You get addicted to the feeling. You literally get addicted to this, because every time you have a challenge, trying to overcome the challenge, bringing the team in, trying to find this solution to a certain problem, and then finding it and proving to yourself, to the investors and to the team that you as a team was capable of finding the solution. That's something that's worth, I wouldn't say worth living for, but of course it's like every single individual is unique. But if you're really enjoying the process, that's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. is the key.
Yeah.
Rashid, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thanks
much
for
for
having
coming.
me. It was a pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you.